Hey folks, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and continuing on in our Mixbus processing series, today I'm going to show you how to use tape saturation on your Mixbus. Okie dokie, moving into tape saturation area, but before we dive in here, if you are ready to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process in its entirety and really start to hone your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the thing for you. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and it's just a simple PDF that will walk you through the entire mixing process, step by step, to help you get professional and radio-ready mixes without any more of the hassle and without any more of the guesswork. It is a completely free guide, and you can download it below using the link in the video description. Now let's jump in here and explore tape saturation on your Mixbus. So far here, we've got the console shaper on our Mixbus, and we've got the SSL style bus compressor, the Britcomp here inside of Studio One on the Mixbus as well. We have all of our balances here. We're going to be working pretty much the same way we have been with our previous two plugins. So I'll show you what the mix is currently sounding like. We'll get the tape saturation plugin on, get it kind of set how we want. Then we'll go back and adjust our balances to make sure our track works with the tape saturation plugin. Oh, excuse me, but let me play you what the track is currently sounding like with just the console shaper and our Mixbus compressor on. Again, there's nothing on any of these tracks yet. These are all recorded tracks. The mix is not yet built up. So here's how our mix is currently sounding with just these two plugins on the Mixbus. You can hear where we started there too without the two plugins in. So we're getting that depth from our console shaper, and we're getting that element of glue from our Mixbus compressor. Taking our mix that much closer to being kind of a finished sound with just a couple plugins here. That's the idea of Mixbus compression. You want to get your mix as close as possible to sounding finished before you even start working on any of the individual tracks. That way you can kind of just dive in to the tedious stuff and make little tweaks along the way to get your track where you want it. So now the next thing we want to add here, for me, this is the order I'm working in. I get my console shaper in, get the Mixbus compressor in, and then I want to add my tape machine in. So I'm going to add in, I use the soft tube tape machine here. That's this guy here. I'm going to put it in at the end of the chain here, so following the Mixbus compressor. Now, working the way we've been working, where we build our balance, put our plugin in, and then rebuild our balance, we might have to pull things back and do a little less compression with our Mixbus compressor, because we'll get a little bit of compression here from the tape saturation from hitting our tape machine, just a little bit of tape compression. That might be fine as well on top of our Mixbus compressor. We'll have to see as we push in. If things start to sound too compressed or too overpowered, we can duck things back a little bit on our Mixbus compressor here. Here is the soft tube tape machine. Most of your tape machines are going to have the same general settings here. You'll have your amount or your drive. You'll have tape type sometimes. A couple different tape types is nice to give you a different color. And then you'll have your tape speed as well. For Mixbus, I like to go 30 IPS on the tape speed. So the highest tape speed we can go here. Anywhere below that, I would use inside the mix. So 7.5 or 15, I would probably use, like if we're going on the kick drum or on the bass guitar, I would use those. But I like to use the highest one here on the Mixbus. Just gives the most effect, I think, for me. And it works better on the track overall rather than an individual instrument. For type here, I like to go with the B setting on this particular unit here. I haven't messed with too many of the other units. I did use the Kramer tape for a little while, and I've never used the Slate Digital tape machine, but I hear that one's pretty fabulous. I might have to demo that at some point. Maybe I'll swap out. Who knows? But this is what I'm using at the moment. I like the B setting because it beefs up the low end, and it really helps the relationship between the bass guitar and the kick drum. So that's why I'm using the B setting here. And then for amount, I usually end up just one notch up from default. So it defaults to 5 I like to put it up to 5.1, and it usually ends up sounding where I want it. But we'll mess with the amount a little bit, and we'll mess with the different types as well here. So I'm going to hit play. We'll start without it, and then I'll kick it in. You can hear what it does for our track just at these settings. So right where the needle is here on the VU meter between 7 and 5, that's where I want it usually. So that's why these settings, like I said, usually work pretty well for me because my mix ends up around the same level most of the time, and it usually puts it right between that 7 and 5. A couple things that I'm noticing right off the bat here, putting the tape machine in. It's doing a couple different things across our mix. It's really helping the low end, so it makes our kick drum and our bass guitar feel really big, and it blends them together really well. So they have a nice relationship, and they work together pretty well inside the mix. The other thing is it makes the mix jump out of the speakers. So far, we've got our 3 plugins in. We get our depth from our console shaper, we get our element of glue from our Mixbus compressor, and then our tape machine helps to hype our mix and make it feel like it's jumping out of the speakers at you. I especially hear it on the wide panned electric guitar. So helps our low end feel nice and big, so our kick drum and our bass guitar, and helps our guitars jump out of the speaker here. Let me A-B it one more time for you here, and then we'll mess with the amount and the type here. We'll see what the different types do on the tape machine. You hear it? We get a little bit more weight from our kick drum and our bass guitar, and our electric guitars on the widespread electric guitars start to come out the speakers. So we get that element of hype, and it makes our mix feel a little less flat sounding, which is what we want. Now let's mess with the amount here, and we'll mess with the different types as well. I'm going to kick up the amount first. We'll see what we get as we push harder here inside into the tape machine, and then we'll see what the different types do on it as well. So they're pushing the amount all the way up. It kind of feels like we're pinning the mix. And you can see we're pinning the needle here on the VU meter on the tape machine, but you can hear it audibly, like the mix is like slammed as far as it can go into the tape machine here. We don't necessarily want that type of effect. Our kick drum and our bass guitar get pushed too far out front. Our mix balances start to go all over the place. Right at the 5.1 here, sitting between our 7 and our 5 on the VU meter here. Exactly where I want the mix amount-wise and volume-wise pushing into the tape machine here. It gets me exactly what I want, frequency-wise, balance-wise, tone-wise from the mix. Let's talk about the different types here. Like I said, I like the B setting. It feels like it hypes the low end a little bit more. Let's talk about the other two and see what they're doing. Kind of just a different curve on each of them. A feels the most balanced across the board. B, we get that hype in the low end, we get that bump in the low end. And C feels like it does the same thing for the top end, like it bumps up the top end or hypes the top end a little bit. Let's go through one more time. Just bear that in mind. A feels like it's the most balanced across the board. B feels like a bump in the low end. C to me feels like a bump in the top end. So we'll start in here on A. You can hear what each one of them do. B feels the most powerful to me because we do get that extra bump in the low end for our kick drum and our bass guitar. It helps those work better together inside the mix, and it feels like it gives the mix the most power we can get from the tape machine. C, hype in the top end, makes our guitars feel harsh, and A still feels kind of flat to me. We're gonna leave that there. So that's our tape machine now. Same way we've been working with our previous two plugins here with our console shaper and our Mixbus compressor. Now we want to go back and tweak our mix to work with the tape machine here. We got it set so it's working nicely on our mix, but we don't want the tape machine to be working on the mix. We want them to be working together. So let's go back, rebuild our balances here so our track works with the tape machine here. We're going to start on our kick drum here, and we're just going to build our balances same way we did before to work with the tape machine. Just a couple tweaks there across the board, and it's working much, much better with our tape machine. You can see all I did here was I bumped our snare drum up just a touch so it sits better with the kick drum. We're getting that bump in the low end from the tape machine, so I want the snare drum to still sit evenly with our kick drum, so we need an extra lift on the volume on our snare drum to make sure it sits nicely with our kick drum. Tom sounded good. Pulled our overheads back just a touch. Cymbals get a little crazy sometimes with the tape machine in. Messed with the bass a little bit, but it felt good where it was. And same thing with the guitars there now. Let me A-B the tape machine one more time here for you, and we will be good to go here. So everything's working together as it should now. Console shaper, Mixbus compressor, and our tape machine. Let me A-B the tape machine one more time here for you with and then without. Listen to how our mix changes without the tape machine. So much more power and so much more excitement from just throwing one plugin on here. And you can see we barely tweaked the default settings here on this unit, just pushing the amount up a touch, up from 5 to 5.1. Our low end feels so much bigger, and we get that extra element of hype that helps our mix jump out of the speakers. I hope that was helpful for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you are ready to take your mixes to the next level and really start dialing in your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the tool for you, and it is completely free. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and you can download it below to start creating more professional mixes in less time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.